All right, welcome to the lab. Field log entry 1. I've just introduced 1,000 termites into this new habitat. My goal here is pretty simple, really, to watch how all these tiny individual insects start to think and act as a single coordinated mind. Let's see what they get up to.
So this is the big question, isn't it? It's the whole reason we're doing this. How in the world does a superorganism actually think? How can 1,000 separate little bugs coordinate so perfectly that they basically act like one big intelligent creature? Well, that's exactly what we're here to find out.
So, here's the plan. I've broken down my observations into 5 key phases. We're going to start with their basic nesting behavior. See how they settle in. Then we'll start throwing some progressively more complex challenges at them just to see how they adapt. First up, putting the colony under glass.
Okay, first things first. Before we can really start testing their limits, we absolutely need a baseline. So my first observation is super simple. What happens when we just drop them into a brand new environment? How quickly can they get organized and start building a home? And the stars of our show? A colony of over 1,000 termites. Now that's the critical mass we need to really see their complex collective work in action. Any fewer, and you just don't get the same effect.
And just look at this timeline. It's absolutely incredible. In just 3 hours, the entire colony got to work and carved out this amazingly intricate network of tunnels. A single termite? No way it could do this. This is our very first glimpse of their stunning collective efficiency.
Okay, so the nest is established. Now it's time to shake things up a little bit. I added a common earthworm to the enclosure. My hypothesis was pretty straightforward. The soldier termites, the ones with those massive jaws, would see it as a threat and attack. I really wanted to see their defensive protocol kick in.
But my hypothesis was completely wrong. Just look at this. They didn't attack. They didn't really seem to care at all. They just worked around it. Some even used it as a bridge. This is just a remarkable example of energy conservation. Why waste resources fighting something that poses no real threat? They just decided to coexist. Amazing. So, we know they can build, and we know they can assess threats. But what about finding food? How do they decide what to eat, and how do they tell everyone else? For this next test, I let them go hungry for a day, and then I introduced 2 different sources of cellulose to see what they do.
And at first, what happened was, it was kind of weird. They immediately swarmed the processed cardboard, exploring all its little holes and crannies. But the natural tree bark, the stuff you'd think would be their favorite meal, was almost completely ignored. I had to ask myself, what is going on here?
And the answer, it turns out, lies deep inside the termites themselves. See, they can't actually digest wood on their own. They have these incredible microscopic creatures called flagellates living in their guts, and they do all the heavy lifting. It's this incredible symbiotic relationship. Each termite is basically a tiny walking ecosystem.
And then, just like that, everything changed. A couple of scout termites finally figured out that the tree bark was in fact good food. They released a chemical signal, a pheromone, into the air, and suddenly the entire colony responded. The communication was totally invisible, but the result? It was instantaneous and perfectly coordinated. But here's the really clever part. Even while the main swarm was focused on the high-priority tree bark, smaller groups were quietly hollowing out the cardboard from the inside. They were exploiting both food sources at the same time. You got to admire the efficiency. In a termite colony, absolutely nothing goes to waste.
Okay, so they can build, they can assess threats, and they can forage like pros. But can they solve a puzzle? To really put their collective intelligence to the test, I designed a labyrinth. There was only one correct path to a food source at the end. This should be interesting.
The rules were pretty simple. Get from the start, navigate through a whole bunch of dead ends, and find the wood at the finish line. And remember, this isn't a test of one termite's intelligence. It's a test to see if the colony as a whole can actually think its way out of a problem.
Right off the bat, something totally unexpected happened. One termite kind of cheated. It broke through one of the walls. It was a clever move, sure, but it actually led to a dead end. And because termites follow chemical trails left by others, this one wrong turn led a whole bunch of them astray. It's a perfect example of how one bad idea can influence the whole group.
But then, the colony course-corrected. Over the next day, just through constant trial and error, they collectively found the right path. This is what we call emergent intelligence. It's when the group as a whole solves a problem that no single individual probably could on its own. It's fascinating to watch.
And that brings us to the final observation.
The
the one that really brings all these behaviors together. I introduced the colony to this miniature wooden house. The goal here was simple: to witness their destructive potential in action over several days.
So after 24 hours, I came back to check on their progress, and I saw almost nothing on the outside. And that right there is why termites are so incredibly dangerous to our homes. They do all their work completely out of sight. The real damage starts long before you ever see a single sign.
But inside? Oh, it was a totally different story. The siege was already well underway. I could see them signaling each other, huddling along the walls to start eating, and building these little mud tunnels to keep everything humid. They weren't just eating the house, they were turning it into their new nest.
And what became crystal clear is that the real danger of termites isn't their speed. In fact, they're some of the slowest eaters out there. The true danger is their silence and their sheer persistence. I could just barely hear these tiny sounds of chewing, and that confirmed it. The process had begun. A slow, relentless consumption from the inside out.
And that just leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? What we've seen here in this controlled lab environment is what 1,000 termites can start doing in just a matter of hours. So it makes you wonder, what is a wild colony of millions doing right now, all around us, completely out of sight? It's a powerful and maybe a little humbling thought.